So prepping this message was interesting because I spent time this last, actually 2 weeks, thinking about all the changes that happened from 1 year ago to this year. And we have seen dramatic changes in our country that none of us were expecting. Nobody who started and set goals in January of 2020 put down anything related to what we experienced, because none of us could have seen that coming. And we saw so many crazy things, and we learned new things, right? All of a sudden, things like this make sense. Zoom meetings, audio only, Zoom meetings with video, right? Some of you know what I'm talking about with that. I mean, most of my day I spend on Zoom meetings, online meetings. So it's like, if the camera's off, great. But if they tell you it's a camera required one, all of a sudden you gotta, take care of that. So totally get what the humor is of this picture. How many of you remember the reality of this picture, right? Remember what it was like when you could finally get your haircut at the end of whenever they let them to start to get... How are they not defined as essential workers? Says, man, all right, that was rough by the end of that thing. And then where's Waldo got so boring in the social distancing world because, where is he? Well, he's 6 feet away. It's easy to spot. We learned so many things in the last year. We learned new terms that are now a part of our vocabulary, right? You know what social distancing means, and a year ago you probably didn't. And we know about herd immunity, which always makes me think of a bunch of cows. And I don't know why we're labeled as a bunch of cows, but herd immunity is all of a sudden important. And then, and flattening the curve. We don't hear as much about that one anymore, but we sure heard a lot about it early on, right? And we know what these things mean. We learned so much. We learned that some people just cannot survive without 5,000 rolls of toilet paper at any given time. Remember that? I mean, it was just crazy. People went nuts in the middle of this. Your COVID test came back positive. Wait, that can't be correct. I have more than 300 rolls of toilet paper. So it's like, what? My favorite cartoon that emerged over the last year when it came to this subject specifically of toilet paper was this one. Holy coronavirus, we need toilet paper. It's a respiratory virus, not Chipotle. But, I mean, it's like, what are you doing? What are you doing? Why are you doing this? And if you walked into Walmart and saw the whole toilet paper aisle cleaned out, you know it was like, what is happening on planet Earth right now? This is insane. This doesn't make any sense. But what that really was teaching us is that when people are scared, they're not rational, right? That's what we were learning. When people get scared, they are not rational. Logic is set aside when people are scared. And there was a lot that was truthfully scary about what happened last year, and people were scared. And the truth is, there are people who are still scared even now. I mean, when all of a sudden the news started coming out, and every day it was, good news only, right? It was just scary stuff about what was happening, and nursing homes being affected, and people were passing away, and there was so much fear associated with it. And then there was so much loss associated with it, right? I felt just heartbroken for all of our kids. I mean, the kids took this on the chin. Anyone who graduated from high school last year, what a miserable experience. All those kids who worked all of their career to get to state or to accomplish something in sports, and all of a sudden, all of it gone. No competitions, no sports, no nothing. And again, sports in the grand scheme of things, I know it's not like what we're talking about, but for them, they're not getting another shot at high school again. They've moved on, and it was so much loss for the college kids, and the experiences that they should have been having, and loss for businesses, huge losses for businesses. Imagine if you were somebody who started a brand new business in January of 2020, and a lot of people did. I mean, there are just so many losses. And our perspective really changed on some things, didn't it? How many of you think that teachers in America are dramatically underpaid after this last year, right? Every parent who had to try and balance a job, home, and schooling their own children now gets why our teachers in America are not paid enough. They should be paid a lot more. They're essential to our nation. We learned a lot. And obviously, I could go on and on with things that we learned as a nation. I really realized how much I was taking for granted just being able to gather and have a church service where you drank coffee and shook people's hands and you could sing without worry about all these restrictions. And we took so much for granted. And as the concerns are diminishing and the vaccination is getting more and more out there, all of a sudden things are starting to return to normal, and there's some things that we just want to talk about to make sure that we really learn from what we just lived through. So I'm doing just a one-off message today. It was my habit for years that on the week before Easter I would stop and I would reflect on everything I learned in the last year. So I used to do this every year. So I decided to do it again this year. I'm not saying I'll do it every year, but this year I was. So it's not part of a series, and I just want to talk about what God taught me last year. And if you wouldn't mind, would you take your notes out and grab a pen if you haven't grabbed one already? Welcome to those of you who are watching online, either on our website or other places where you're watching. There are notes attached. You can follow along with you. And in typical me, you can see there are 3 points. And when I was going through my timing it all out yesterday, I had to cut one of the points out. And then I was going through them and timing it all this morning, and I had to cut another point out. So I'm really talking about one thing. And it's hard for me because there's some big stuff that I'm cutting, and I don't know if I'll ever get back to it. But I really just want to talk about one thing, and it's the third one on your notes. So if you go to the very bottom, I want to talk about the best spiritual lesson that I learned in all of this last year. And if I was summarizing it, I would say it is just all about the will of God. And if you've heard me teach this year, you already know how much I've been talking about this from January on. So basically, all I want to do is just tell you a story. I want to tell you the story of what God has been doing in my life since really the middle of December for the last 3.5 months. And it's a story that I give little pieces of in the series that I did in January, but I couldn't tell you the whole story because some stuff was still happening, and now I can. So now I can tell you everything. My passion for His will, the will of God, has just grown so much. So let me tell you how it all began. This man's name is Frank Lawbach. If you're a reader, go get his books. Frank Lawbach, he lived in the 1900s. He was a missionary for years overseas, and at the age of like 45, he wrote in his diary about how miserable his life was. It's like, well, this sounds like a great story, right? So he was a Christian. He'd been following Jesus for 16 years. He was serving overseas as a missionary, and he was miserable and bored, and the Christian life seemed empty and unfulfilling. And then at the age of 45, he started an experiment that changed his whole life. And his experiment was every 15 minutes, every 30 minutes, he would try and pray a simple prayer to God. And his prayer was so simple. It was, Father, I'm your servant. Is there anything you want me to say for you right now? And is there anything you want me to do for you right now? And he said what he was trying to do is line up his will under the will of God every 15 minutes to every 30 minutes. So he would just pray this prayer silently. It's not like he would stop whatever he's doing and bow his head. No, you can just pray that prayer. You can pray that prayer right now. You can pray it right now while you're sitting here. Father, is there anything you want me to learn from this? You could be praying that. You can hold that thought in your mind. So he just was committed to this. And so he started just lining his will up with the will of God. I'm here to serve you. Is there anything you want me to say right now? Is there anything you want me to do right now? And tons of times there was nothing, and then sometimes there was something. And then it was his job just to obey whatever he felt like God was prompting him to say or do. So I downloaded his biography years ago. And every January, most every January, I spend time at the start of the year rereading parts of it. Because I know what he's talking about is true. I know it. Do you know, have you ever had this experience? Sometimes you just hear something and you just know it's true. You just know it. You may not be able to validate it. You may not be able to put the facts behind it. You may never have experienced it, but you know the moment you heard it is true. As I read his biography, I knew it was true. Here's what he said. After 30 days of doing this experiment, every day, every 15 minutes or 30 minutes, the will of God, Father, whatever you want. He said, I already felt a joy that I had never experienced in 16 years as a Christian. And I love this sentence. This sense of cooperation with God in little things is what so astonishes me. When was the last time you had a sense that you were in a partnership with God here on earth? Like, you were just cooperating with his work. And he was at work all around you. He said, I need something. I turn around and find it waiting for me. I must work to be sure, but there is God working along with me. God takes care of all the rest. Would you like that? Would you like it if God just started doing more in your life and started taking care of all the rest? Would that sound like a good thing to have in your life? It was his personal experience. He said, my only part is to live this hour in continuous inner conversation with God and perfect responsiveness to his will. So whatever he felt like God was saying to do, that's what he had to do. And he said, God took care of all the rest. His biography is just like that. Over and over again, I kept reading those things, and I was like I tell you, I may not be able to prove it to you, but I absolutely know that is true. That's why I keep going back to it every January. To put this thought in my mind, that this is true. This is what I need to do. His will needs to be my will. What he wants me to say and do, that's what I will say and do. It's all about what he wants done on earth. It's just what Jesus taught us to pray in the Lord's Prayer. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, right? That's what we were taught by Jesus. Your will. What's your will? That's what I'll do. So that happened in January. But in December, something else happened. I was reading in Luke chapter 17. And I have talked about this several times this year already. So if you've heard me speak about this, this is just going to be a refresher for you. But some of you haven't heard me speak about it. And these are like the verses in my life right now. So I'm so excited to share if you haven't heard me talk about this. In Luke 17:5, Jesus' disciples come to him one day and they ask the best question, maybe the best question they ever asked Jesus. They said, show us how to have greater faith. So our faith is here, we want bigger faith. And Jesus loves the question. He says to him, if your faith would grow just a little bit, if you just have a mustard seed-sized faith, he said, in this case, you could say to this mulberry bush, go jump into the sea, and it would jump into the sea. Wouldn't that be cool? Be like walking out and saying to the tree out there, why don't you go jump in the Mississippi River and watch it jump into the Mississippi River? How cool would that be? Well, it's like, well, maybe not so cool for the tree, but so cool to see, right? It's like, so Jesus says, you have asked the right question. This is the right question. If your faith grows, you are going to experience God doing things in your life that you cannot attribute to you. You want that? Great. And then, so if I was one of his 12 disciples and Jesus said that, it's like, I'm getting my pen out. I am writing down everything he's about to say because I want to know how to grow my faith. And then Jesus starts to say, and here's how you grow your faith. And he says this to him. When a servant comes in from plowing or taking care of sheep, does his master say, come in and eat with me? No, he says, prepare my meal. Put on your apron and serve me while I eat, then you can eat later. So if I'm one of his disciples, I'm like, all right, I'm ready. Tell me, how my faith going to go? Okay, great, here we go. A servant out in the fields all day, yep, comes in, and the master says, just go put an apron on and serve me. It's like, at this point, as one of his followers, I'd be putting my hand up, saying, Jesus, I'm not sure you understood the question. Because I'm asking you how to grow my faith, and you start telling me about masters and how they give commands, and their servants just do anything that they say. And again, 2,000 years ago, they understood that. They could look around in any direction, and there were master servants everywhere. And the masters gave the commands, and the servants just obeyed. And Jesus would have said to me, Brian, just hold that thought, I got more. I'm like, okay, keep going. And then he goes on and he says, and does the master thank the servant for doing what he was told? Of course not. So I'd be writing that down. It's like, all right, so don't expect any thanks. Like, how would, my hand would have gone up again. I know myself. I just said, I don't understand. It doesn't make sense to me. I'm saying, how can I grow my faith? And you're saying, servants simply do everything the master says, and they never even expect to thank you. I'm not seeing the connection. And then Jesus wraps it all up with this verse. He says, in the same way, when you obey me, you should say, we are unworthy servants who have simply done our duty. Crazy. That's the answer to how to have greater faith? That's the answer. And notice the assumption in the verse. The assumption is clear, right? When you obey me, doesn't Jesus just kind of assume that we who are listening to him are going to obey him? So in other words, he says, you want to know how to have greater faith? Here's what it's all about. You change your mindset about yourself. You make yourself my servant in this world, and anything I say, you do it. And that's how you're going to have greater faith. If you gave me 100 guesses on what Jesus was about to say, I would have missed 100 times. I never would have come up with this. Some of you are sitting here, and truthfully, as an American, I don't like that sentence. I don't even like the way he worded it. That doesn't make me feel good. That's not about my self-esteem here. That doesn't build me up. I'm supposed to call myself an unworthy servant? What in the world is Jesus talking about here? How does making myself his servant so that anything he prompts me to say or do, I do, grow my faith? That's the key question. So I read those verses, and then I read the biography of Frank Lawbach. And Frank Lawbach started with a simple prayer, and I put it up here. Father, I'm your servant. Is there anything you want me to say or do for you right now? That's his only thing. One thing in his mind. Matter of fact, I want you to say that to God right now, just as a form of practicing. Don't say it out loud. In your head, while you're just listening, say, Father, I'm your servant. Is there anything you want me to say to someone in your name? Is there anything you want me to do for someone right now? Just say it. You can say it in your head. So all of these things combined, it's like you want great faith, you've got to line your will up with what my will is. And Frank Lawbach did that, and he had an amazing adventure with God. And I made a commitment the second week of January that I was going to do this. Second week of January is when I started. And that has been my prayer, and I have said it to God probably easily 2,000 or 3,000 times in that time. And the first week is super hard. If you try this, and I really want you to try this, the first week is super hard because it's hard to get in the habit of saying something new. And so I'd be in Zoom meetings, and again, you don't stop what you're doing to pray that prayer. You don't say, hold on a second, like I just got to pray for a minute. Okay, I'm back. No, you just keep going. You're working on a project, and you say, Father, is there anything you want me to say or do for anyone in your name right now? And you're in a Zoom meeting, and you say, Father, is there anyone you want me to say or do? And you're in the grocery store and standing in line, waiting to check out, and your constant prayer is, Father, is there anyone here in this line that you want me to say something kind to or do something kind for? And it is your constant prayer. And so to get in the habit, I have a scratch pad that sits at my laptop. I work at home in front of at my desk all day long. So this works well for me. And I have this scratch pad. Every single day I start a new pad. And then every time not every time, most of the time I write down that prayer, or most of the time I say that prayer, I put the time down for when I do it. And so day after day after day, and these aren't all of them, for 3 months now, it has been my constant daily prayer saying, Father, is there anything you want me to say? This is about you. I serve you. So is there anything you want me to say right now and anything you want me to do right now? Now remember, the point of this is that our faith will grow and we will experience God. So is that true? Is it true that if you start to do what Jesus said, that you will experience God? Well, this is where I have a cool story to tell you from someone who's been doing this for 3 months. Some of you know that I'm in school right now, finishing my degree. I'm just a few months away now. Oh, thank God. Almost done with this thing. And my degree is in the L&D world, so I love learning and development. I want to do training. I want to do, my long-term passion is leadership development. I can't read enough. I can't stop thinking about it. I love this. And my long-term dream would be to work in a department where they do leadership development, either full-time or a big part of what they do. This is my dream job. It's why I'm going to school. It's what I'm going to graduate with this degree in. In December, one of my classes had an assignment. Have you ever heard of a book called What Color is Your Parachute? Ever heard of that? Many of you have. It's like the book if you need to find a job. If you're not happy with what you're working for, this is the book that any career counselor will tell you to read. So if you don't like your job, by the way, this is a great book. And there's an assignment in there saying, map out, here's where you are and here's where you want to go. And then it talks about a couple of different ways to get there. But truthfully, when I did the map and I turned it in and I got an A, I'm like, yippee-doo-dah-day. I still don't know what to do. I'm in a job where it's not even in the field that I want to be in. How do I get into the field that I want to be in, and how do I start moving in the direction where I really feel called by God to be, where I got so much passion, energy I can't wait to do, that I'm finishing my education in, I've got years of experience. It's like, I don't know. I have no idea. So now here's where we struggle as Americans. What do? Well, we worry, or we fret, or we try and figure it all out ourselves. But there's another way. There's the way of Jesus, which is you do what's in front of you, but you line your will up with his and say, God, it's about your will right now for my life. Whatever you want me to say or do, that's what I'll do. So I'll do the next thing that's in front of me, and that's all I was focused on. What's the next thing in front of me? Then there was an assignment, another assignment. This time I had to interview somebody in the HR field. And so I asked my manager I didn't even know anyone. I said, who can I talk to? And they gave me this name of this person. I had no idea who this person was. So I just messaged them and said, I've got an assignment. Would you be willing to let me interview you? And this person is way up in the company. It's like I didn't know that. I just gave me a name. I just wrote them. So all they can say is no. Interesting, I actually wrote two people. The first person I wrote never even wrote back, but this one wrote back. And so set up an interview, had a blast. We had so much fun talking. We went over time, and it's just like, you know what it's like when you're talking to somebody who has the same passions you do? It's like energy. And afterwards I said, would you mind if my assignment's over, thank you for everything, can I just set up another time just to talk to you? Because I have so many other questions about this. So I set up another time. And we just talked, and at the end of the time she said, you know what? We have our mentoring program here. Would you let me mentor you? And if you know me, you know my answer. It's like, yeah, please do. Mentor me. I want to learn all I can learn from you. I mean, she's so smart. The time I just type and type and type. I can type 4 pages of notes from our mentoring sessions because I learned so much from this woman. So she's like, well, there's one condition you have to meet first before you do this. The first thing you have to do is you have to talk to this other person because technically your department falls under her, not under me, so you just need to get her permission first. And I said, okay. So I set up a meeting with her. And I just thought I was just going to send her an email. No, she wanted to meet. So we met and talked, and we had such a good time, because she's in the field too, that I said, would you mind if I talk to you again? And we set up another time to talk. And at the end of that second time, so here's something else that was happening this whole time. So the whole time, again, I'm really focused. God, what's your will for my life? I'm not trying to figure out the path forward. I am trusting you that you'll show me the path forward. And here's one of my favorite promises of God in the Bible. Did you know that God has promised that he will instruct you in the way you should go? Did you know that? Did you know that God has made a promise to you that he will show you? Not that you'll have to figure it out. He'll just show you. And notice what kind of eye he keeps on you at all times. What kind of eye? It's a loving eye. He always has his loving eye on you. So every morning when I was sitting there praying before I'd go to work, this verse, I would put my finger on this verse and I'd say, hey, you promised this. I'm going to do your will, but you got to do this for me. You got to fulfill this promise for me. You got to show me the way to go, because I don't know how to go there. I have no idea. So I'm praying that prayer, trying to line up my will with the will of God, having these conversations that just keep emerging, doing what I'm told to do, talk to them. So in the second conversation with this person, she asked me what I want to do, and I'm like, if you can tell, I'm really passionate about this. So I'm like, this is what I'm going to do, this is what I love doing. And she said, well, why haven't you applied for the open position here at our company? And I'm like, there's an open position in our company? And I don't know anything about it. So we we opened up the link together, and I start reading through this job description, and I am not kidding you. My heart is beating faster. I'm like, this is like everything that I would want to do next, in the next step. This is incredible. And so I am super excited. So, you know, when I get a little excited about things, so you can tell. So I got off the phone with her, and I'm like, okay, I want to apply, but I'm going to talk to people, get wise counsel. I talked to my fiance. It's like, hey, what do you think about this? She's like, yeah, it looks good. So it was good conversations. So the following Monday, I put in my resume. And, you know, and here's how I was praying the whole time. This is so important, people. You got to understand this. At no time did I ask God to give me this job. If I start doing that, whose will is it about? At no time. And this was really hard for me because I was excited. But I did what I've taught you so many years. You neutralize your will. I was not telling God what I wanted. I was saying, God, if this is your will, then I'll say yes or no to it. You just show me what you want. Because that's what this is, right? Me sitting out here going, hey, you do this, that's my will being done. And if you do this, by the way, you can try and use God like a vending machine to get what you want. You will, I guarantee you what this path leads to is tremendous frustration and disappointment with God. Your faith will not grow there. Your faith will die there. This is where people's faith dies. And you ask people whose faith dies, tell me about why you don't believe in God anymore. And they'll tell you so many times, well, I trusted him for this. I asked him for this. He didn't do it. He didn't do it. He didn't do it. Well, that's not how it works. It's not you dream up whatever you want for your future and you tell God to do it and then God is responsible to do it. Nope. It is about I bring my will under the will of the God who's crazy, crazy, crazy in love with me. And I trust him. And I do what he shows me to do next. And so the whole time, week 1 had this big interview, went well. Week 2, bigger interview, went well. Week 3, bigger interview, went well. 4th week, I get the job offer. And again, the old me, pre-January me, would have just been like, woohoo, awesome. And I would have been praying the wrong prayer the whole time. This time, I get the job offer on a Tuesday, and I'm just praying, and I'm saying, all right, God, I'm about 95% sure, but I really want to know, is this really what you want for me? Because I've taught you before, just because you get an open door doesn't mean God wants you to go through it. I really want to do your will. Now, I was 95% sure that this was it. Fits so much of what I feel God is moving me toward. But I wanted that last piece just to know. And when he sees that you really want to know what he wants you to do, he will show you. The next morning, on a Zoom call, huge Zoom call. It's one of the big leaders in the company, and she was telling us all that she had just accepted a brand new role in the company. I didn't think she could go higher, but it was a bigger role. In an incredible moment of leadership, this woman that I respect so much on the call talked about she was scared to say yes to it. She was afraid. But she's a huge fan of this woman named Brene Brown, which is another just amazing woman. And Brene Brown said in this, she quoted a Brene Brown quote about, and basically the essence of it was, you're standing at the door, you got this open opportunity, step through the door, go for it. And so she talked about all of us so vulnerably, in front of all of us, so vulnerably about this decision she was making to step in and take yes. And I'm sitting there saying, God, could you just show me one more time if this is really what you want? And this incredible leader comes on the call and says all of this and gives this quote. And as she's reading the quote, it was like the Holy Spirit inside of me said, you need more? Have you got enough? She wasn't done reading the quote, and I knew 100% what his will was for my life. And so I said yes. I'm just so amazed by it. Listen again. Listen to this. Frank Lawbach. This sense of cooperation with God in little things is what so astonishes me. I need something and turn around and I find it waiting for me. I must work to be sure, but there's God working along with me. God takes care of all the rest. How many of you want that in your life? Do you know what happened to my faith this year? My faith grew. If you follow Jesus, you've got to come to grips with this question. Going forward, whose will is it going to be? And it just depends on what you want. If you want your faith to grow and you want experiences with God, take the right off-ramp. I've wasted way too many years of my life telling God what I want him to do, which is my will. And that has produced frustration and disappointment and anger, and I don't want any more moments of that. None. So for all of you, understand the offer. This is how I would put it today. I know I will experience God when his will is my number one focus. And the reason why I brought all of these for you today to see, and these aren't all of them, like I said, is so you can see that for 3 months this has been my focus. Father, what do you want me to say or do for you right now? On the way to church this morning, I was just praying that to God. Is there anyone that might need me in some way that you want me to serve in this place? I'm your servant. What would you like me to say or do for you right now? Understand what he's offering. A tremendous experience with God. So shift your mindset and really come to grips with who you are. I know who I am. I am his servant in this world. That's who I am. Is that how you look at yourself? Is this really what you want? I know what I am. I am his son, adopted into his family, who has been asked to be in a role of servant in this world, and I gladly sign up for that. Gladly. Because you get God. And then third, seek his will hourly. Ask him to reveal his will to you every hour. Start this experiment. Now, some of you don't work at a desk, so this won't work, but every one of you works at a desk, you can do this. You can have a scratch pad right in front of you all day long, and you can just write the time down. Every time you say that prayer silently. And you can get in the habit. And then you know what happens? Then when, like for me on the weekends, I'm not at my desk. Thank God. But I'm praying that prayer all day long because it's part of my life now. It's part of my habits. Put it in as a habit in your life. You'll experience God. If you're not, by the way, I have friends that work on a factory floor, they work in the warehouse, what I would say for you is get a clicker. You can buy a clicker online that will just keep track of things and keep it in your pocket and let it annoy you so that you reach in and then when you feel it, you click it and you say that prayer. So that's a different way to get a habit in your life. The point is that it gets to be a habit. That is your constant prayer. If you don't know that this is what Jesus constantly prayed, this is what he did. He didn't hide this at all. He said over and over again while he was here on earth, my only purpose is to do the will of him who sent me. Did you know that? One time he met this woman at the well, and his disciples came back later when she was gone, and they said, hey, do you want some food? He said, I've already had food. And they're like, did someone come feed him? And he said, no, my food is to do the will of him who sent me. This is what sustains me and gives me energy. This is how Jesus lived, and this is how he asks us to live, with the will of God being our number one focus. Seek his will constantly. And then obey whatever he shows you. There have been 2 times in the last 3 months where God has said to me, stop doing this. This isn't right. It's not always good stuff. Sometimes he's going to show you stuff that he doesn't want you to be a part of. He may say I wish he would say to many, many Christians, stop posting that. Right? That's what I wish. And maybe he will. When it's really about his will, he will show you some things he wants you to let go of. Don't do that anymore. Don't say that anymore. That's not okay for you to say. And sometimes he'll say, start doing this. Many, many times God has prompted me to call someone, write someone a note, text them, send them an email. And then it's your job as his servant in this world, whether you understand it or not, just to obey him. And that's where the adventure happens. Now, if you're just exploring your faith with us here today, or you're watching online exploring your faith, I love that this is what you heard. Love it. Because if you listen, in most churches, you get the sense that Christianity is about coming to a church service whenever you're not too tired. Or maybe doing some religious class that most of us who had those classes were bored to tears throughout and can't tell you one thing we learned. Right? Or some religious ceremony that you have to perform to make yourself right with God. That's not it at all. Zero truth in that. That is not what it is about. It is about one thing. It is about a dynamic and real relationship with God Almighty. That's what it's about. And Jesus Christ makes that relationship possible for every human being. He's the one that gives us the opportunity to be in a real relationship with God. The Bible says that what we're about to celebrate at this time of year is that 2,000 years ago, Jesus came into this world to give his life for all of us. Because we have done and said unloving things all our life. And God is love. Some of you said some things this week that you wish you could take back. They were not kind and they were not loving. We've done this all our lives. And every time we've hurt another human being, we've hurt God. And so Jesus came to pay the debt that we've created. Let me have you all bow your heads as we finish today. Maybe this is the next step for you spiritually. Is maybe for the first time you've really heard and understood what Christianity is about. It is about a real and dynamic relationship with a real God of love. And maybe that's what you want. Maybe some of you spent your whole life doing religion, jumping through religious hoops, trying to earn your way, and it is not about that. Jesus loved you so much, he laid down his life on a cross and then took it back again 3 days later, proving that he is the Son of God. And anyone who will turn to him can be rescued. Anyone. And if you want that rescue with your head bowed, you can say something like this in your heart to him. Say, Jesus, I'm turning to you today. I can't even imagine how many times I've said or done something that wasn't loving, so please forgive me. Rescue me. I want a real relationship with you today. In Jesus' name, amen. Now, as we finish up today, can I ask you all to take the little card out of your program? Even if you're a regular attender, I ask you to do this every week. Just take a moment and take this card out. And if you're a regular attender, just put your name down. But maybe you prayed and asked Jesus to forgive you. You can check this box and let us know what you've done and put it in the offering box in the back. If you're watching online at our website, penuelchurchlife.com, there's a little button in the upper right-hand corner right at the top. Click that button, let us know what you've done, and we'll send you some follow-up stuff in the mail. Thanks so much for coming. Hope to see you again next week.